Once you're
Okay, recording started.
I see a button that says it's recorded. Let's go. Okay.
Okay, I think we're good. Yasmin started it.
Yeah,
All right.
recording started.
The time is 5:01 p.m. on August 10th, 2020, and I would like to call this meeting of State Board of Commission to order. In the interest of public health and safety and pursuant to the government's Executive Order N29-20, members of the Sustainability Commission and staff are participating in this meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the Executive Order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in conference room C101, Building A. The city launched a virtual commenting portal, eComment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their own home. You can find a link to eComment at www.chulaVista.ca.gov/boards. You can also go to grandioseideas.com, which is an interesting name for a website for recording the comments. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period in order to be considered, and that will be for each item on the agenda. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow the Sustainability Commissioners time to read any comments that have been received. And the same pictures need to be on the grandioseideas.com website in order to see those for comments. If you have difficulty or need assistance with e-comment during the meeting, please email lrodriguez@chulavistaca.gov and staff too. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Ball,
Present.
Commissioner Guevara Gluyas. Commissioner Guevara Gluyas is absent. Commissioner Corrigan. Commissioner Corrigan is absent. Commissioner Legaspi.
Present.
Commissioner Matthias.
Present.
Commissioner Rodriguez.
Present.
And Vice Chair Richardson.
Present.
Okay, thank you.
So we have two members, Corbin and Rivera Luis are both absent from the meeting. We also have a new commissioner, Rodriguez, and welcome. Glad to have you on the commission, and to kind of take a little liberty here. Would you like to introduce yourself, kind of your background, and what you'd like to see accomplished while you're on the commission?
Hello, it's my pleasure to be here. As was mentioned, my name is Angelico Rodriguez. I am a Chula Vista native. My background is in ocean sciences primarily. I have a bachelor's in physics and went into oceanography and oceanographic research. I now work for the Center for Climate Change Impacts and Adaptation, and I have a general interest in seeing Chula Vista be the beneficiary of a lot of the cutting edge research and adaptation studies that are going on through the universities and organizations in San Diego.
Very good. Welcome. Glad to have you on board. I'd like to move on now to the public comments. Public comments in this section of the agenda. I'm sorry. Okay. Members of the public address the board, back to the commission, on items that are not listed on the agenda. I'll now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view, and that's on the grandioseideas.com website. Remember to refresh the view on your screen to ensure your comments appear while we're waiting for the next 2 minutes. The comment period for public comments is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read the submitted comments? It looks like we have one comment from an item that's not on the agenda. It's a report relative to the CCA and its status. The rest of the items appear to be related. There are 9 of them I see. They appear to be related to various items already on the agenda. Has everyone seen those? We need more time to review them, or are we prepared to move forward?
Quick question. Are you talking about the e-comments that were emailed to us?
No, if you're on our website, it's called ChulaVistaGranicusIdeas.com, which is actually where the comments are being received.
Okay.
If you go to the Chula Vista boards, there's a link to it, and you actually find the comments being posted there. There are 2 by Julia Woodward, 3 by Carolyn Schofield, and let's see, I'm not sure how to get to the rest of them, but there are 9 of them that are shown as posted.
Okay, because I saw the comments that, I don't know if it's forwarding to our email.
Hello,
Yes.
this is Monica. So I did forward to all the commissioners what we had received. So,
Okay.
but you could go ahead and view the link we sent it just so you could refresh it, just in case anything else comes in, because it could be that public is viewing and they could be submitting comments now. But as before the meeting, we had only received that one public comment that
Okay.
that doesn't relate to anything on the agenda.
Okay, that's what I'm seeing
Yes.
on the site. Okay,
Okay.
very good. So are you to say anything from your end about the e-comment, or can I move forward to the next item?
You can move on to the next item. We only received one public comment. So if
Okay.
you're ready to continue, you could go ahead and continue unless any commissioner wants to comment on that public comment.
Does anyone wish to comment on the report from Carolyn Schofield regarding the CCA and the activities of the equipment that are moving forward with at the board? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. And we also need to wait for 2 minutes for comments on this item before I begin having discussion. So there's a 2-minute clause to allow for public to submit any final comments on this item before we deliberate. As a reminder, please refresh the viewer screen to ensure the comments appear. So we're going into another 2 minutes here.
Okay. Will staff please display the public comment and start the timer?
The 2 minutes is up at this point. As everyone, I guess there are no new comments that came in that I saw. So if all the commissioners have had a chance to review the minutes, can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
I so move that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Is there any discussion on the matter? If not, we'll move to a vote. Do we need to have a roll call vote?
Can I please have the, can you please state your last name with the first and the second, just for the record? So who made the motion? I know Legaspi, but if he could just state his name, and then I didn't hear who second.
Edward Legaspi.
And
Okay.
Tina Mathias second it.
Okay.
Do you want to do a roll call vote now, or can we just do it by voice?
Yeah, I have to do a roll call, so go ahead and say yes or no. Commissioner Baugh? Commissioner Baugh? I don't know if we lost her.
She's muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Guevara? Commissioner Corrigan, so Commissioner Legaspi?
Yes.
Commissioner Mathias?
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez?
Yes.
And Commissioner Vice Chair Richardson.
Yes. The vote is unanimous. Let's see, the next item on the agenda. Let's see. The agenda's got a lot of stuff in it here that I need to go through. The next item on the agenda is discussion and vote for Commission Chair and Vice Chair for the fiscal year 2021. Does staff have a presentation on this matter?
We do not.
So do we need to have another 2-minute comment period, I guess, here to allow public to submit any final comments on this item before we deliberate? Reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear. So we'll start a 2-minute process again. The public comment time has closed. There are no new comments that I saw on the website. Is that what the secretary saw?
That's correct.
Having,
Sorry to interrupt. Commissioner Guevara Gluyas has joined the meeting and she let me know that her microphone was muted. She did vote for approval of the minutes. So I don't know if maybe Yasmin or Colleen could see if she's muted.
Hi, yes, I'm here. I had joined, I believe, I now joined as a panelist. That should fix the issue. Thank you.
Okay.
welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Now that the public comment has finished up, I'd like to take a personal moment at this stage and to say my personal appreciation to our former chair, who has now left the commission after 8 years, Oscar Romo, who, in my view, provided tremendous insight, knowledge, guidance, and put some challenges before this commission, including changing the charter to move this commission in a direction that is broader than what we had basically been the Resource Conservation Commission at one time, so that needed to change. And also his vision that the city of Chula Vista needs to seek formal acknowledgement as a sustainable city, which really is a goal that the next chair could take and proceed ahead with, and would be a challenge for all of us to try to get that done. So with that, I'll open the floor to nominations. And maybe if someone wants to volunteer to be chair, I would certainly welcome any volunteers. Otherwise, the floor is open for nominations for chair.
Well, I have a comment. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I too want to give a big thanks to Chairman Romo. He really was a climate warrior for us, and I know he spent countless hours trying to make this commission and this city a much greener place. So we want to state that, and hopefully we'll still see some of him as our representative for Measure B. And in regards to the chairmanship, I'd like to think that I would like to nominate Tina if she's interested. Tina's been here the longest. I came in and it's just about everybody's changed during the last couple of years. So if Tina is interested in that, I think it would be appropriate to have, Tina is interested to consider it.
I'm taking that as a nomination. You're nominating Tina, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm nominating Tina if she's interested. I don't know, she might have a lot on her plate, or it depends. But she's been here the longest, and I think it's only appropriate that we give her an opportunity if she's interested.
Do I hear a second for the nomination?
I would like to second Tina.
Okay. Any other nominations from the floor for the chair of the commission?
I honestly, John, I'd like to nominate you.
I appreciate that. Actually, I'm not the visionary that is necessary to drive this commission forward. I tend to be a numbers cruncher, and I don't think that's the kind of thing you need to have leading the commission. The commission needs to be led by someone who has real vision, and certainly I would think you qualify, and certainly with the number of things that you do, I think that's a much better choice than trying to put me in that slot. Okay?
Okay, I get it.
Right.
Okay.
Any other nominations?
So Vice Chair Richardson, this is Manuel. Let's take one position at a time. So can I accept Commissioner Legaspi's as a motion instead of a nomination to select Commissioner Mathias and then Commissioner Gluyas as a second?
I think that was the intent.
Okay. So go ahead and ask for any ask for discussion, and then we can go forward with the vote.
Well, that's where I was heading. So I guess if there are no other nominations, we'll proceed with this as a motion to appoint Commissioner Thias to become chair for the 2021 year. So any comments before we take a vote? With that, we'll call the roll, please.
Give me 1 second. Okay, Commissioner Boss,
Am I supposed to approve or say yes, or what's the word?
just say yes.
Okay, yes for Tina.
Okay, Commissioner Guevara,
Yes.
Commissioner Corrigan, absent. Commissioner Legaspi,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthias,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Richardson.
Yes, it makes it unanimous. Congratulations, Tina. Ordinarily, I would hand off the chair at this point, which we ordinarily would do in a regular meeting, but since I've got this long script I've got to read, I'm gonna continue to kind of work through it. But the next meeting is definitely all yours. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, so now I'd like to open up nominations for vice chair. Well, here nominations for vice chair to take my place on the commission next year.
I'd be interested in assisting Tina as a vice chair.
I was just gonna nominate you.
That's a second for the nomination.
I will second. This is
And we satisfy Manuel, we're going to consider the nomination to be a motion. Is that maybe it would be more official? All right. Are there any other nominations for someone to make for vice chair? Okay, hearing none, let's call the roll call on this motion.
We have some discussion?
By all means, if you'd like to discuss, yeah. Please do.
Okay, yes, I would be interested. However, like if anybody would be interested in stepping up as the climate change working group chairman. We could talk about that later.
Yeah, I don't think we could act on that at this particular meeting.
I know,
It needs
but
to be on the next agenda. That's good.
I just think it's appropriate that, that we all have an opportunity, and maybe we should rotate our responsibilities here on this commission. So that's all I have to say.
Point well made. Yes, that's a very good point. Any other comments before we vote? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Ball,
yes.
Commissioner Guevara Gluyas,
Yes.
Commissioner Corrigan is absent. Commissioner Legaspi,
Yes.
Commissioner Matthias,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Richardson.
Yes, and congratulations to Commissioner Legaspi for taking on this responsibility for next year. That's fantastic. So moving on to the next item, item 3 on the agenda is the multifamily and commercial benchmarking and conservation ordinance presentation. The staff have a presentation to make on this matter.
Yes, let me get that up for you just a second here, please. Sorry, hold on just 1 sec. I seem to have lost it on my screen. Sorry for the delay. I'm just, I'm trying to find it. Just one second, please.
While she's looking for that, I noticed that there are several comments on the comment thing regarding this item. So Commissioner Yoshida, read through those before we get to the discussion.
Sorry for the delay, everyone. That was a little confusing there for a second. Just wanted to let everyone know we're going to be talking again about the multifamily and commercial energy benchmarking and conservation ordinance. Just as a recap, we had mentioned this at our June meeting, and I know we have a new commissioner. So I just want to get a little bit of information on this before we get started. So let me see here. Yeah, so let me go on to our next slide here. So I wanted to bring everyone up to speed. Like I mentioned, we have our new commissioner, so this is probably a little bit new to her. We wanted to remind folks, and we'll cover this again tonight as well, but benchmarking is a best practice that's used in many cities across the US, and we'll briefly go over a couple of those in a couple of minutes. And we're really hoping to get input from as many people as possible tonight. I know, again, we have a new person, and would love to hear your input if you have it, but we're really hoping to get ideas from as many folks as possible tonight. I know it can seem like a large item. Hopefully the intro we did in June was kind of a good start. Hopefully you've had 6 or 8 weeks to kind of think about it and go back and look at some of the documents and kind of get a better grasp of it before we discuss it in a few minutes. And hopefully together we can create a policy that works for Chula Vista in our unique circumstances here, and help support our climate action plan and other efforts we have going on. And I wanted to let folks know as well that we've been coordinating with lots of other groups on this. We've been working with the US EPA. They're the folks that manage Energy Star Portfolio Manager, and they've been helping us with some of the aspects of this ordinance, and gotten some guidance from them as well on logistics of how this might happen in Chula Vista. And then we've also met once or twice with the California Energy Commission staff. Most recently last week, we were touching base on a few items as well. And they just expressed how excited they were about this kind of local ordinance, local action, and how it might help California reach goals faster. And they told us that they really saw some value in some of the measures in this draft. So that was it was good to hear from folks that haven't been working on the trenches in this like we have for quite some time. So that was great to hear, and a good reminder that hopefully this is something that will work for Chula Vista. And then with that, I wanted to turn it over to Eric Engelman, and I didn't even announce myself, but I'm Colleen Wisniewski, Environmental Sustainability Manager with the city. And between my colleague Barbara Lochi, who's also on the line, as well as our consultant Eric Engelman, we have really been working on this for about, I think, even over 2 years now. So we wanted to just recap some of this stuff and kind of try to make it a little easier for folks to kind of see what we're trying to do and try to break it down in a way that maybe makes a little sense. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Eric.
Thanks, Colleen. My name is Eric Engelman, and I'm the former energy policy advisor for Mayor Jerry Sanders at the city of San Diego about a decade ago. And since then, I've been helping cities across California develop energy policies like this one, and I've had the pleasure of working with Chula Vista for almost 5 years now. And it's a pleasure to talk to you tonight. So what I wanted to go over in this presentation is briefly, what are the policy drivers behind why we're presenting this policy to you tonight and hopefully soon to City Council. A little primer to go back over movement of benchmarking ordinances, and then the evolution from that to building performance ordinances, and then some of the basics of Chula Vista's program design. And then finally, I want to cover the Chula Vista staff's response to the Sustainability Commission's feedback in June, and the efforts we've made to adapt this ordinance to the comments we received, and then finish with staff's recommendation to for the Sustainability Commission to approve this ordinance so that it can be heard by City Council in the next month or two. Okay. So background here, so Chula Vista has long been a climate leader, as you all know, starting in the early aughts, but the most recent climate action plan, which was developed through a lot of collaboration with the Climate Change Working Group and with this committee, was approved by this commission and then adopted by City Council back in 2017. And that document calls for building performance reporting and public disclosure policies. And specifically, that document directed staff to develop a residential and commercial energy conservation ordinance for City Council consideration. And finally, it set a target of retrofitting 20% of multifamily and commercial space to achieve 50% savings by 2035. So the ordinance we have here is a response to that mandate. Okay, so benchmarking policies were an innovation in that they showed that if building owners track their energy use and then compare it to like buildings, then some of them will take steps to increase their to reduce their energy use over time. So benchmarking is the process of rating a building's performance, comparing that performance with similar buildings, tracking progress over time in energy use, and then disclosing that energy performance rating to data to the public. On average, buildings that benchmark see a 2 to 3% improvement. So the basic philosophy of benchmarking is you have measurement, you have transparency with the public, and that results in energy efficiency. And as a slate of benchmarking policies were adopted around the country and around the world over the last 15 years. Next slide here, Colleen. Okay, so let's sidestep to the practical matter of what is benchmarking. What does benchmarking actually look like, and how do you do it? So the EPA manages a tool under the well-known Energy Star brand called Portfolio Manager that lets building owners create an online account and track, input their energy use, and then gives it a rating. So an SDG&E, so through Energy Star, building owners under this policy will be able to import their energy bills electronically from SDG&E. Portfolio Manager will calculate an Energy Star score between 1 and 100. And then building owners required to benchmark will click Chula Vista's reporting link. The benchmarking report is automatically populated by Portfolio Manager. And then the user will attest to the veracity of the data they're submitting, and then it gets submitted electronically to the city. And that's a process that will happen once a year, starting in 2021. And buildings over 50,000 square feet are already doing this process under California mandate that started in 2018. And starting in 2021, they will no longer have to submit directly to the state. Chula Vista will be doing that for them, so they only have to submit once to the city of Chula Vista. Okay, so back to the policy overview. So after benchmarking policies, the evidence showed that most buildings achieved savings over time from benchmarking, but not all. And so it's programs that have experience with benchmarking started noticing that a subset of buildings was getting left behind. Although they were tracking their performance, they were not improving. So that's how energy conservation or building performance ordinances came about. And they improve on benchmarking policies by putting in place additional requirements to encourage efficiency if sufficient progress is not made over a certain amount of time. And the most common requirement is to require audits. Audits give information to building owners to help them prioritize the energy efficiency investments with the best ROI. And other policies, or some policies require both, also started requiring retro commissioning, which is a low-cost process that can have immediate results where they're a good fit for that type of building. And finally, we also see building performance standards as a final resort for buildings that don't respond to audits and retro commissioning. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's a map of that was put together by the Institute for Market Transformation of building performance ordinances in place across the country. And the orange indicates benchmarking only policies, and the purple indicates policies that also have performance targets or require additional actions like audits. And there have been policies have been adopted by more than 30 major US cities: New York City, Washington, DC, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, Denver, Seattle, Portland, and then across California, the largest cities, San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, Berkeley. And like I mentioned before, the entire state of California appears in orange there because of California's AB 802 policy, which is a benchmarking only policy adopted in 2015 that affects all multifamily commercial buildings over 50,000 square feet. Next slide, please. Okay, and then here's a more detailed view of several benchmarking or building performance ordinance policies across the country. And then on the bottom row there is Chula Vista's proposed policy, so we can see how it compares. So first out of the gate was New York City in 2009 with their benchmarking policy, and that still affects buildings over 25,000 square feet. And like a number of other policies, they then went back and updated that policy in 2019 because they saw this trend of, while many buildings were experiencing progress as a result of benchmarking, there was a sizable minority that was not, and they over time became responsible for a larger and larger share of the city's emissions. So now New York City requires audits and minimum performance standards as well. And that's similar to Washington, DC's experience, St. Louis's experience. And now the city of Berkeley is in process of updating their policy, which does require audits, but updating it with a minimum performance standard as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so the basic architecture of Chula Vista's program. All properties over 20,000 square feet will benchmark annually through Energy Star Portfolio Manager through the process I described. And then after their 5th year of benchmarking, if a building hasn't achieved either an Energy Star score of 80 or above, and that's out of 100. And by the way, the average Chula Vista building today is we believe a 76. So it's our starting scores are pretty high. And then, so if a building doesn't either have a score above 80 or hasn't made hasn't met their minimum performance target after 5 years of benchmarking, then they're required to do an audit. After that audit, buildings that have a score below 65 have another 5 years to implement the recommendations in their audit that will result in a 10 or 15% performance improvement, as long as those recommendations are cost effective. And again, that's meant to, for the buildings that don't respond to benchmarking and don't respond to audits, that's a minimum, that was meant to be a minimum achievable performance standard. Next slide. Okay. There we go. Now, for multifamily buildings, as a result of feedback that we heard from cities that have had ordinances like this in place for a number of years, we took a little bit of a different tack and adapted the requirements to multifamily buildings. All buildings will still be required to benchmark annually. Now, as far as the audit requirement, we exempted tenant spaces because tenant spaces, we have the split incentive issue with the tenants paying the utility bills and the owners being responsible for investments. But not to leave tenant spaces behind, we did have a cost effectiveness study that was done last year that identified in a typical multifamily building in California that's built before 2006, that identified several measures that commonly are cost effective across those building types. And so we're requiring those one-time upgrade, and those first requirements will be starting in 2023. For the common areas in buildings, if they meet our criteria as having a significant common load, then the audit and improvement requirements that I spoke about on the last slide do apply. And for common areas where the building owner pays the utility bills, we believe that they will be responsive to the audit and improvement requirements, since those are affecting the owner's bottom line. Okay, and then here's a snapshot of how Chula Vista's program fees compare with other cities. There's somewhat of a wide range. Many cities have their own funding for their programs, and others are using a fee to recover program funding. And as you can see, for Chula Vista, the latter is the case. We are using a fee to recover program funding. And the fee for benchmarking annually will start at $186.50, and then it will recalibrate each year to make sure that all program fees are recovered. And we have noted here that there will be no audit and performance requirement fee every 5 years, and that's an update from the ordinance version that you all have that wasn't noted there. And finally, the fines and penalties. Our fines and penalties are $750 for non-compliance for buildings that are 20,000 to 50,000 square feet, $1,250 for buildings, $1,500 for buildings 50,000 to 100,000 square feet. And then the maximum $22,250 applies to buildings over 100,000 square feet. And that's roughly in line with other cities. We wanted to make the fine large enough so that it was a deterrent, although realistically those fines are not great in comparison with even the cost of an audit for a large building. So we think they're pretty reasonable. Next slide. Okay. So staff have been working hard to respond to the Sustainability Commission's feedback after the June 8th meeting as directed. And here's a summary of the actions that have been taken. So following the meeting on June 8th, Staff reached out to the policy subcommittee by email to confirm a list of all of the comments and items and suggestions for changes. We, at the request of the commission, created a more reader-friendly program summary, and we requested feedback on that from the policy subcommittee as of June 22nd. And we provided an updated ordinance with all of the requested changes on June 24th. We held a virtual meeting with the policy subcommittee to discuss those changes, where they approved them, and also to discuss their other comments. And one request that came out during that meeting from the policy subcommittee was to explain the targets and the numbers behind the ordinance. So in response to that request, we provided several follow-up items on July 6th, including a clarification of the specific greenhouse gas targets. We identified the policies that direct staff to create this ordinance, which I summarized at the beginning of this presentation. We provided the 2016 greenhouse gas inventory to see, to demonstrate how existing buildings, how their emissions play a part of the overall community-wide emissions. We provided an explanation of how Energy Star scores are calculated and what the eligibility criteria is for buildings to receive an Energy Star score. We also provided links to the data collected under Los Angeles and California's benchmarking data, which played into how we set some of the parameters in this ordinance. And then finally, we held a meeting on July 30th where we created a presentation to provide an overview of again, how we use that quantitative data to set ordinance parameters. Next slide, please. Okay. So as far as the feedback that we got that related directly to the ordinance, the specific suggestions, I just want to give a brief overview of what those were and how staff responded. So we heard that we needed to make the requirements more clear. And so we created a streamlined applicability section at the beginning of the ordinance. And we also created the aforementioned user-friendly communications materials, one version of which we provided to the Sustainability Commission, or to the Policy Subcommittee. And then we were also asked to clarify the meaning of mechanical equipment as it was used in the ordinance. So we created a definition. That's now a defined term in the ordinance. We received feedback that the administrative fee amount should be specified in the ordinance and with a clear purpose. And so we did so. We set the fee at $187.50 to start, and then clarified the purpose of the ordinance to be full cost recovery net of any grants. We also received the feedback that city staff should not be able to change the performance targets. And so therefore we modified the ordinance to specify that city council must approve any changes to the performance targets. We also adapted the cost effectiveness criteria in response to feedback by adding language to the ordinance, and we corrected some misspellings and typos that were identified. Next slide, please. And then as far as broader comments, I'll go over those as well. So there was some feedback about an exemption that we have in the ordinance that exempts buildings from the retro commissioning requirements if they don't have working digital controls. And so I wanted to clearly state what the rationale was for that exemption. So retro commissioning can be a low-cost, high-impact intervention if buildings have central equipment with a large enough load and they have digital controls that are working or can be repaired. And that's because retro commissioning consists of resetting the control settings in order to save energy. So it's therefore the ordinance exempts buildings from retro commissioning if those conditions are met in order to avoid requiring in order to avoid a requirement like retro-commissioning that wouldn't result in energy savings, because if you can't change the controls, you're not going to save energy from retro-commissioning. Now, that's not to say that under the audit that will also be required, if it's cost effective to replace those controls, that will be covered under the audit. Next slide, please. Again, we also received questions about the numbers in the ordinance, and received the comment that, quote, the numbers don't add up. And so we, as mentioned earlier, shared data with the policy subcommittee and then held a quantitative overview meeting where we explained the numbers. Next slide. We were also asked to clarify the purpose. And so the very first section of the ordinance, section A, has a purpose and intent section. And then also we listed the goals in the ordinance overview document that was shared with you all and as well with the policy subcommittee. Okay. We also received feedback requesting more incentives like rebates for solar instead of the ordinance that we're presenting today. So I wanted to explain that many existing incentive programs exist today through state and utility sources. This ordinance leverages those incentives by creating transparency around building performance, which strengthens the natural economic incentive for efficiency. And the natural economic incentive is the more efficient a building is, the higher property value it commands, and the higher rents it receives due to lower energy costs. And there's research to back that conclusion up. And funding for additional incentives provided by the City of Chula Vista as a part of this program are not available at this time. In the future, there is potential to leverage more incentives from the CCA. There's potential incentives coming out of SDG&E or other sources. Okay, and then we also received feedback that perhaps we should consider separating the multifamily component of this ordinance from the commercial component. And so staff considered breaking this ordinance into two separate ordinances. We researched the pros and cons. We evaluated the resource requirements that would take. And although it may reduce confusion in some senses, we also saw that it would increase confusion in others. And weighing all of this, we determined that it wasn't a valid option at this time. Okay, so in conclusion, staff's recommendation is for the Sustainability Commission to refer this ordinance to City Council for consideration. We believe that we've responded adequately to all the concerns raised back in June. And our timeline, assuming that the Commission goes ahead and approves tonight, is to do the first reading at Council in September, second reading shortly after, have the ordinance go into effect by January in time for the first benchmarking deadline, which would be May 20th, 2021.
Excellent. And then I just wanted to remind folks as well, Eric just went a little bit over the timeline and what we're kind of hoping happens. I wanted to add another something into that our current support, our funding for this policy work, as far as development of this ordinance, ends at the end of 2020. So that's why we're trying to keep on this timeline if possible. And then council can always decide later if they want to, change the timeline somewhat. And then as Eric mentioned too, this is a best practice in many cities throughout the country. And I mentioned as well, we've been working on this a long time, at least 2 years, and we've done a ton of research. We've done a lot of revisions over the last couple of years, even before we came to the commission in June. It was great to get some feedback from someone that doesn't work in our office on this. So that was great to get some great first comments from you all then in June, and then to work with our subcommittee over the last couple months. So hopefully this has helped evolve it into something that's a little easier for folks to understand and to maybe get some support around. And hopefully this will help us to implement another action in our climate action plan, and especially since this city council directed us to implement that once they approved it in 2017. So I think with that, I think that's it. So if open the floor to questions or comments at this point.
Thanks. Right now, I guess we have to call a 2-minute pause for our public to submit any final comments on this item before we deliberate. Reminder, please refresh the view of your screen to ensure new comments appear.
Will staff please display the public timer? Thank you.
It appears that the public comment is closed. It doesn't appear that there are any new comments that were added to the screen, although there were, I think, 3 comments regarding this item, which the commission should have already seen. So,
Are we going to have an opportunity to ask questions?
yeah, once public comment is finished, yeah, that's the next point. Any commissioners have comments or questions you'd like to ask now that the public has completed their process? Please proceed. Any comments from commissioners? Feel free to step forward. Just raise your hand, I guess, or just go ahead and step in.
I was wondering, Eric, within our region, what has been the outcome, or do you have any experience with benchmarking here within San Diego County?
Thank you, Commissioner. So within our region, it is fairly new in that the city of San Diego just passed their policy last year, and their first year of benchmarking was this year. However, as I mentioned, data, the state of California has been collecting benchmarking data from all buildings over 50,000 square feet since 2018, and that includes CHULA VISTA. So we do have the data that's been submitted to California under that, and from that data, we show 2 things. One, that the average Energy Star score is, as I mentioned, about 74. And that is roughly in line with the California average. Now, the way the score is set is the national average is always 50. It's a percentile score, so that just shows you, as a result of 4 decades of California's energy efficiency policies, that our building stock is more efficient than the rest of the nation. But that's what we have at this point.
Okay, I have some other questions too, and that is, I saw there the public disclosure for non-compliance, and that kind of concerned me. And also you mentioned, and it's all about carbon footprint reduction. As far as what you think you'll achieve or what the city will achieve, can you compare it to any other energy program?
As far as quantitative targets of the ordinance, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, and yeah, what I'm getting at too is that it's, I mean, there is a cost for it, and there's also fines, and there's also costs related to implementing this policy for the ordinance. And I was just wondering too, there's a lot of things here that I'm still thinking about, and I saw in there the costs that are gonna, the fees related to it, and also the fines. And I was thinking, I know businesses, they really never pay the fee; they just pass it on, and tenants will be subject to it, just like renters with the multifamily housing. I know there's a distinction between the two, but has this gone to those stakeholders, and have they weighed in on this?
Thank you. Yes, we did. We have talked to a number of stakeholders, including the Southern California Rental Housing Owners Association, several commercial auditors, and the level of the fee, $186.50 a year for buildings 20,000 square feet and above, is really minimal. And as far as other programs, typically programs will charge a fee that's calibrated to be cost recovery, and so that's in line with other programs. And as far as how the overall resources of this program compared to other city programs, Colleen or Barbara, do you want to compare this to Freebie or another conservation program in those terms?
Yes, I can, and then Barbara, unless you want to go. Did you want to? I don't know if Barbara had something to say.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So we do offer a freebie program. It's a little bit different. It's a different way of looking at the buildings and how things are operating. So I don't know if you're familiar with freebie, but essentially it's a mandatory ordinance that all businesses with a business license within the city that have a storefront have a quick energy and water evaluation when they get their business license, and then every 5 years thereafter. It's free, whereas they don't have to pay for this service where staff come to them. And nothing's mandatory that they'll get a list of measures and potential rebates and incentives and things like that. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to make any improvements. Of course, we recommend things, but it's up to them. I think sometimes there's an issue with the business owners that are maybe renting that space in a larger strip mall or in a large office building. Maybe they have issues making some of those changes because they're only renters. And so sometimes it's hard for them to make that. So we're looking at doing this from another way, which is sort of from the top down by looking at the entire building and kind of getting it that way as well.
Colleen, in terms of FTE, how many FTE does the freebie program require versus this program?
Yeah,
I think that might have been what you were asking, Commissioner Legaspi.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. So typically we have one staff person that manages it. It's not necessarily their full-time job, but I would say between all the folks we usually have working on that, I would say it's about 3 FTEs. We aim to do about 500 of those a year, which is quite a lot. It takes a lot of time and effort to plan and go out in advance and do that. And there's thousands of business licenses in Chula Vista. So we aim to get 500 done, but we usually end up having to target like 700 or 800 because some of those are exempt or maybe they've gone out of business. So it's a lot of chasing folks around. And one thing that we didn't mention today, but I think we did mention in June, was that we have roughly 200 buildings that are 500 square feet and above in Chula Vista. And then we have roughly about the same number, about 200 that are 20,000 to 49,999 square feet. So we're looking at about a total of 400 buildings within Chula Vista, if that helps with any context.
And the benchmarking and the program we're discussing today, if I'm correct, Colleen, will be half of an FTE. Is that correct?
That's the plan, yes. And that's why we're putting that in for cost recovery as well.
Okay. So relatively few resources compared to other programs. And I just want to mention, for those unfamiliar with Chula Vista's freebie program, it's an award-winning program that's been modeled by cities around the country. So it's very successful. So in terms of capacity, I think it's well within the conservation department's capabilities.
One thing I may want to mention, I guess, is we have a new commissioner. What we have is subcommittees that are appointed for various things. This happened, what was referred to as the energy policy subcommittee. That was myself and Ed Legaspi. So we're the ones that were buried in all those questions that you saw in the presentation. So, to that extent, we got into the weeds a lot deeper than we may want to get into, certainly at this particular point in time. But just to clarify that, that's kind of how it's going to be.
Thanks for that clarification. I also had a question. Wait, oh, is it okay?
Right,
to go?
Yes, Commissioner Rodriguez, yes.
So what sort of resources would be provided to building owners to help enact those upgrades?
Sure, I can start off on that. So again, the audits will be required only if buildings don't improve on their own. And typically what we see in many buildings that benchmark is that they're able to make operational decisions based on feedback that they get from their annual reporting, where they can make low cost or no cost improvements that save energy. But again, for those that don't and do not achieve the minimum, do not achieve a score of 80 and are required to do audits, the audits focus on evaluating what are the highest ROI measures. And so by putting that information in the hands of owners, tenants, as prospective owners, that commonly results in follow-up action. And then in terms of resources, do you mean like finance, like loans, like when there's no capital? Okay, well, yeah, please.
I meant educational resources, like I guess what's provided in the audit feedback.
Okay. Yeah, and one good piece of feedback that we've now incorporated is the audits and the benchmarking requirements, and the benchmarking reports that will be shared with stakeholders will be complete with explanations and public-friendly tips on how to read the information being given to them, and also how they might, if they want to reduce their own energy bill, how they might follow up. And then, Colleen, do you want to talk more about the public outreach that has been, that we're going to be doing with CSE going forward?
Yeah, I'll start, and if Barbara has anything else she can add as well. So another consultant helping us right now is the Center for Sustainable Energy. And they'll be helping create outreach materials for regular building owner folks. So things that are really make it accessible to them and let them know some of those questions that you're asking right now. You know, why should I do this? What happens when I get my results? How can I, act on the results to make changes? We'll have a website as well, just a benchmarking website on the city's website that will have a lot of resources. And then as well, that'll be a part of the that part of that full-time person's job. It's actually a third of their time's job to help folks that might need it. So whether it's they're having issues benchmarking or they don't understand how to do it, or what do you do with these results later and how does this help you improve your buildings?
Any other questions or comments from other commissioners? I guess.
This is Commissioner Ball. Can you hear me?
Yes, proceed ahead.
I have several questions. I don't know if I should go through them first and see if, he can answer them maybe in groups or whatever. But I didn't understand why are public buildings owned by the state or the county or feds exempt? And how does the Energy Star score, how is it determined? What does it exactly mean to retro commission? I'm not familiar with that word. And why are there no audit fees?
Sure. I can take those one by one. So your first question was, I believe, why were other governments exempt? The state and the federal government have their own energy efficiency targets and building management policies. And so it was, this policy was targeted for simplicity at non-government buildings.
Have those energy targets been affected recently? Are they still as good or as high as these standards are?
I would hesitate to answer that without doing some research on my own. My guess would be California's is intact, and that the federal targets are probably been affected by the Trump administration.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Okay.
I wanted to add quickly on that same note, great question on those other public buildings. The city has been benchmarking their own buildings for a handful of years now. So we have been doing this on our own as well.
Has it resulted in savings?
I think anecdotally, we track our energy use monthly, actually. So it's kind of easy for us to start benchmarking anyway, because we're already collecting the data. And we also track our solar production. So it allows us to see if there are issues happening. If a building's energy use spikes, we can kind of look into that, or if it suddenly goes down and it's not during a pandemic and the building's shut, we can look into, hey, what are we doing there that's really helping? So I think anecdotally, yes. I can't give you any numbers on that, but it's been really helpful for us in tracking, a portfolio of like 40 buildings. So yeah.
Great.
Remind me your second question.
Second question is, how is the Energy Star score determined?
Okay, sure. So the intention of the Energy Star score is to compare buildings, compare like buildings, and control for factors that are basically essentially outside of a building's control or part of business practices that we don't want to count. So for example, two buildings compared with each other are normalized for weather. So if two identical buildings, one was in North Dakota and the other was in San Diego, they would have the same score unaffected by weather. Also, the score controls for operating hours, so that buildings that have more operating hours aren't penalized. And they're really, they're compared based on use and property type. So a hospital is compared with a hospital and not compared with a warehouse. And based on that, it's the methodology is developed out of a large survey of all commercial buildings that's conducted by the DOE every 5 years or so. And then that data is used to create these building type archetypes. And then from that sample, buildings that benchmark are compared with the full data set and then rated on a percentile basis of 1 to 100.
So, given the amount of detail that they have to look at, it sounds like when you participate, you would be putting in a lot of detailed information for your building. I mean, it's a bit of an effort, right?
That's correct. The first time you benchmark, you go through a series of questions where you, put in your building's basic characteristics in terms of what's the square footage, what's the basic use types, what's your occupancy, and then most of that does not need to be updated each year unless there's big changes. And so, but there is a one-time setup time that depending on the complexity of the building can be 15 minutes to an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Again, sorry. I forgot to mention a few moments ago when I was talking about our other consultant, Center for Sustainable Energy, one of the outreach things they can provide is something called Benchmarking Coach that will get us through the end of this year and kind of help give folks kind of like tailored information on step-by-step with some of that information you just asked about. How do I find account information? How do I figure out my building square footage? And then in addition, city staff, that's another thing that they can do is if folks are having a hard time with that initial profile setup, staff can help them, or if they're having questions with data, that's another reason why staff will be able to help them.
Is the commission coach free?
Benchmarking coach, yes, it's free. It may be retiring at the end of this year officially in the capacity of Center for Sustainable Energy, but we'll still have that staff person will be able to help folks as well.
And your third question?
What do we exactly mean by retro commissioning?
Okay, so retro commissioning is simply when a building is built for the first time, obviously the air conditioning settings, the water heating settings, the heating settings are all calibrated. And then over time, those settings get out of whack and they result in things like, maybe a reset of from daylight savings times results in a computer glitch that has the cooling going on when the building is unoccupied on weekends. So retro commissioning is simply coming in and looking at those and resetting those settings to be fresh. And so it's really low cost and has a high return when you have a big central load that's doing big heating and cooling controlled by, controlled digitally.
Okay. Okay, that was great. I did not understand that. And finally, I thought that the audit was without a fee.
So the building owner will be responsible for identifying an auditor, although we'll have a list of auditors that we can point them to, and they'll be responsible for paying for that audit themselves. What the fee that you're referring to was initially we had a city fee that the building owners were also going to be required to pay when they conducted an audit for the city's requirement, but that's no longer going to be, because we're recovering the program costs through the benchmarking fee, there's no longer a need for an audit fee. Does that make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Any other commissioners have questions or comments? I guess I had a couple of comments because I was on this policy committee, as it referred to. My big concern about this particular ordinance is getting a connection between all the activities that are involved and a result that shows greenhouse gas emission reduction. So that you have a lot of activity going on and trying to find that connection between if you do X, you can have a Y result on greenhouse gas emissions is in my view missing from the ordinance. And I found it very confusing. I was one of the people who said separate it. There are several things in there, some of which you can do, some of which you can't. It goes over basically 5 years to do an audit, 10 years before you're required to do something, and it's a fine, which is being presented as a good part of the ordinance, but also says the incentive you have or the effort you're putting in here doesn't have any return that you can force to happen for 10 years. Now, how that ties to the effort to reduce greenhouse gases prior to that time, that's 2030 rather, it just doesn't seem to have a connection. Now, there may be all kinds of reasons why this is a good idea, because of the educational component, because of the awareness component and those kinds of things, that somehow we can kind of squeeze those results out of this, even though they're not obvious from the numbers. So that's really what my main concern with this is. The goal is laudable. It's essential. We need to be doing it. I'm just not clear that this particular ordinance is going to give that result in any kind of a timely fashion. And I'm one of those people who said we need to have incentives in this package as well, not just penalties. We need to have some way of subsidizing some of this stuff so that we actually can move forward on the greenhouse gas emissions more aggressively than even this ordinance contemplates. So those are my comments about the ordinance and why I still am unclear and uncertain as to whether or not it's something that I can even support at this point, given that it's not clear to me how we get the result that we want to get out of it, and that's kind of where I'm sitting at the moment. Are there any other questions or comments? Any additional staff comments to be made at this point? And I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the city council to see what the staff recommendation is to further to the city council for discussion, and the target is to have it to the city council early in September, it looks like. So is there a motion to accept and recommend that this be referred to the city council? Hearing no motion, is there another motion that anyone would like to make on this item other than referring it to the city council?
I'm thinking here out loud, and I'm not prepared in a sense to support this at this time. Thinking maybe we need more time to work on this ordinance and possibly get more of the commissioners to take a deeper look at it at some future time. Just a thought.
Yes, Commissioner Law. I see your hand.
Right. Yeah, I think I'm hearing from you something that I felt that it might not be aggressive enough, that it wasn't going to get results quick enough. But, and especially in light of what I'm reading in some future presentations that we're about to have on the Green New Deal. But by the same token, seems like we could get something started by moving it forward, recommending it go forward to the city council, and that they get it going, and it happens in this 2020 year, especially when they have some funding to support it, and then it can be either revisited or superseded with something that was more aggressive in the future.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
My motion would just be that I move that we send it forward with support to the city council.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I can second.
Okay, so it's moved by Commissioner Bio and second by Commissioner Gort. I'm sorry, I had to throw your last name. Yes. So I guess we now need to have another comment period here, or we're done with the comments from the public at this stage?
We're done with the comments, so now, if you're ready, I could call a vote.
All right, the motion is second on the table. Please call the vote.
Commissioner Bach,
Yes.
Commissioner Guevara, Glorias,
Yes.
Commissioner Legaspi,
No.
Commissioner Matthias,
Yes.
Commissioner Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Richardson.
I abstain.
Okay, I don't know. Do you, Manuel or Colleen, know if Vice Chair Richardson is able to abstain the vote?
Yes, be able to abstain.
Yeah, I would believe so. And then there's 4 yes votes as well.
Yeah, it's 4-1-1.
Passes.
Yes, it passes.
Okay,
So we'll proceed on to the next item.
yes.
Yeah, item 4 is the SDG&E Public Electric Vehicle Charging Presentation Discussion Application for CPUC. Does the staff have a presentation on this item?
Yes, and hopefully it will be faster for me to get it than the last time. So hang on, please. And I believe we have a representative from SDG who will be doing our presentation.
SDG&E here to present our kind of clean transportation strategy, as well as an upcoming program that we are considering filing at the Public Utilities Commission to incentivize the installation of public charging infrastructure throughout SDG&E service territory. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, could you introduce yourself again and what your position is with the SDG&E?
My name is Dean Kinports, and I'm the Clean Transportation Policy Manager at SDG&E. Can you guys hear me all right?
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So as I'm sure you guys are all aware, that the transportation sector is in the early stages of a complete transformation from primarily internal combustion engines going into more of an electric vehicle market. And in San Diego, more than 50% of our air pollution comes from transportation, compared to about 40% statewide and 20% across the U.S. So this is really a critical issue to tackle in our service territory because air pollution affects us all. And as a regulated utility, we're striving to meet the goals and mandates issued by California. And a big part of our role in that is ensuring that we can accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles by offering programs to build charging infrastructure to support electric vehicles. California has made a clear choice to electrify transportation. It's the largest single sector emitter throughout the state, and one of the few sectors that really has not made any significant declines. And at least pre-COVID was the only sector that continues to grow in terms of emissions. So with these lofty state vehicle goals, we've got a lot to do over the next 10 years. And so we really see this as a critical junction where we need to build out this infrastructure to support the increased adoption of electric vehicles. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, the bar graphs represent the increase in electric vehicles in SDG&E's territory to date. as well as the trend lines of where the adoption needs to be to meet state goals. So we've got a significant uptick that needs to occur to really meet the greenhouse gas reduction targets set by the state. Next slide. So what we're doing here is really, it's a bridge application. As you guys know, we implemented our Power Your Drive program that deployed about 3,000 chargers throughout SDG's territory. I think a decent amount were done in CHULA VISTA. And we've also, in the early stage of implementing a medium heavy duty vehicle program, charging infrastructure program, as well as some charging infrastructure in state parks and beaches. But other than that, we don't have any active programs in the public charging space. So this application we're considering filing right now would fill that market segment over a 4-year period while the California Public Utilities Commission litigates a larger kind of transportation electrification framework. And we know public charging is important to incentivize folks to feel comfortable to own EVs, and it offers public charging for those that don't have access to charging at home, which, those important markets that are at work, I guess. So those more important market segments are low, moderate income residents as well as renters. And we think this proposal really help accelerate widespread transportation electrification by reducing the upfront costs of that charging infrastructure for site hosts. Next, please. Next slide, please. So we think there's a large market opportunity. One place that San Diego is lacking is this public charging infrastructure. And we know about 77% of EV drivers are concerned with range anxiety. And throughout the service territory now, we have less than 2,000 level 2 charging stations available. And that's only about 8% of the governor's goals set by the executive order that are supposed to be met by 2025. And there's also kind of a lack of the fast charging, which is that public direct current fast charging stations. So we hope that this program would help support those markets and help grow that infrastructure to enable the switch over to EVs. Next slide. So getting to the program, this would be a 4-year program that we anticipate running from about 2022 to 2026, where SDG would install, operate, and maintain the make-ready infrastructure. That's basically all the electrical infrastructure from the utility meter up to the charger. And that would support about 3,000 L2 chargers in public sites and workplaces. Those workplaces would have to agree to operate those charging stations and make them open to the public, as well as about 350 direct current fast chargers. This amount of charges represents about 25% of the state policy need. So we think it allows for really the early stage of this market transformation to build this infrastructure so to support the vehicles as they come to market. And we're also including a utility side make-ready tariff that would allow all non-residential customers to get the utility side make-ready facilities built at no cost to them, and they would be responsible for basically everything from the end of the utility line up until the charger. So that is less restrictive in terms of like who can use the charging, whether it's open to the public, but still offers some incentive for folks to install the charging infrastructure. There would be no rebates for the L2 chargers, but we're considering about a 50% rebate for the DCFC chargers. And that's like a quick summary of our program. If you guys have any questions or comments.
So I'll now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before we deliberate. As a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear so you can read them. The comment period is now closed. I didn't see any new comments come in on the website unless if someone else did. We can make sure that everyone has read those. Now that the public comment is over, how about comments from commissioners or questions that you have regarding the presentation?
I'd like to say, and this is Matthias, Commissioner Matthias, I'm just grateful that they are looking at putting out more of the stage 2 charging stations. That's definitely needed. So thank you guys for the incentives and everything. Hopefully this goes through.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, and any other feedback you guys have, we would really like to hear. We're trying to collaborate as much as we can with all of our local partners because obviously all the cities have their own climate action plans and goals to meet, and we really want to help, facilitate this transition to, a lower emission state and region.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, I had one question. You mentioned transportation, electrification, framework litigation. Can you explain how our action on this particular item might be impacted by something that potentially is in court? So we're clear on what that is.
So essentially the California Public Utilities Commission has come up with a broad rulemaking to try to determine a more predictable framework of how they want to essentially manage the transition to decarbonize the transportation sector. So it touches on everything from technology and standards, the utility role, program design, costs, like rates, everything across the board, which will probably take another year or two at least. So our thinking and our issue was that while that's being essentially going through the stakeholder process to determine what those regulations are and what that framework looks like. San Diego didn't want to be left in a position where we didn't have active light duty charging programs over the course of that, I guess, policy litigation at the Public Utilities Commission. So we felt it was really important to propose a program that we could offer some additional support in the light duty space, particularly in this public charging space where we feel there's a clear lack of infrastructure support to meet these state goals that are really coming at us fast over the next 5-10 years.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion to, let's see what the recommendation is here. Is there a motion to, I guess, endorse this? I'm not sure what exactly the motion would be.
I think it was to provide comments for their application to the CPUC.
Okay, so I guess it doesn't seem like there. So I'm not sure what the motion would look like that does that.
I'm not sure if we need a motion. I think it's more of just giving the comments you already gave, I think. Monica, what do you think?
But it's listed as an action item, so I guess I was looking for some sort of an action on it.
Yeah. I'm going to double check the other agenda, but I believe it was to provide comments for their application.
Yeah, the recommendation is for the commission to hear the presentation and provide comments for application. So there was no request for an action.
Okay, so this is all right. We'll move on to the next item then. So item number.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you for the presentation. Okay, item number 5, presentation of San Diego Green Deal Alliance in consideration of referral to council to send a letter of support for San Diego Green New Deal. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
Yes, sir. Let me bring it up for you.
Well, just before we go into the presentation, I just wanted to say a couple words. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, this says San Diego Green Deal Alliance. It's a regional response to climate change, environmental justice, and job creation. This came to my attention by our local 350 folks, who's probably listening right now, Rita. And here in a few minutes, David Robertson is going to go ahead and give a presentation on this. So I just wanted to introduce David and also let everybody know that there was a launch of this alliance earlier today. Maybe he can speak a little bit on that. And from here, we'll go to David.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Legaspi, and to all the commissioners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You can. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, so my name is David Robertson, and I'm the chair of the San Diego Green New Deal Alliance Working Group on Transforming Political Power. And yeah, so thank you all very much for allowing some time to do this. I know that you're running short on time, and so I'll do it as quick as possible. The San Diego Green New Deal Alliance is an alliance of 40 different organizations in the region, and it's growing. It's about a year old, and we've just recently finalized our vision and our organizational guidelines, and we are growing fast and looking for other organizations who want to get involved. It's mostly an organization of environmental nonprofits, labor organizations, faith-based organizations, and social justice nonprofits. And as we have this advisory board that is made up of one representative from each organization. We meet monthly, first Monday of each month at 6 p.m. And additionally, we have a number of different working groups who put into action the plans that we come up with. with regard to who we are and our vision, really to put it simply, our vision is all about three things: climate, jobs, and justice. You have a copy of our full vision, I believe, that was given to you in your documents. But to summarize, we are committed to seeing a region that achieves zero carbon by 2035 through a fair and just transition for workers and communities of concern, creation of good family sustaining jobs, and the development of affordable, equitable, and inclusive communities powered by 100% clean energy. The next slide there, I think you can see some of the organizations that have already joined. That's not the full list, but you said we just launched officially today at 11 a.m. And we actually have not gone out and done any outreach yet in terms of having new organizations come on. So what we're doing here today, asking you to consider joining us, is not something that we've really started doing officially yet, but at some point we will do more of this. Most of the current members or organizations that have been involved in the development of the Alliance. The Alliance, there is no staff, there's no budget to the Alliance. We're not an official nonprofit organization. Again, we're just an alliance of these organizations. Maybe you can go to the next slide there. Of course, we have lots of supporters, including, some of you may know Dr. Ram, as he's affectionately known. Dr. Ramanathan is, one of the preeminent experts on the globe on climate change, and happens to be a neighbor of ours right here in San Diego. He works at Scripps Institution of Oceanography as a climate scientist. He also happens to be good friends with the Pope, where he's an advisor to Pope Francis on his environmental policies. In 1975, he was the person who the idea that hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, affect climate change in a negative way. And he's got the highest award you can get from the United Nations, an environmental award, of the Earth. Lots of other supporters, of course, from Scripps, like people like Dr. Richard Somerville, another giant in the field, and then local people like County Supervisor Nathan Fletcher, City of San Diego Council members Chris Ward, Monica Montgomery, and many others are supporting us. So why are we doing this? As the next slide shows you, I think, in 2018, there's been all kinds of things that have come out over the years, but 2018, the findings of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, which is part of the United Nations, said that, we're in deep trouble, that we've got to achieve a zero carbon future, and it's got to be soon. I mean, basically, for the last 50 years, humans have been doing on this planet in terms of burning oil and coal and gas has been just a nightmare for our climate, and not much really has meaningfully has happened since we've been doing this. We've talked a lot about it, but there just hasn't been anything to the point where we can say with some confidence that we're going to be okay. Right now, the scientists are all telling us, I think you all know this, that we're not going to be okay. And in fact, if we don't start doing something yesterday, start doing something right now, we won't be able to stave off the most catastrophic impacts of climate change. So we as an alliance decided that we have got to do this ourselves, that we can't depend on the federal government. We can't depend on our leaders. We've got to, do this from both a top down and a bottom up. So we're the bottom up part. And so that's what our alliance is all about. And I think for the next few slides here, we'll talk a little bit about some of the specifics of what we hope to do. The Green New Deal in San Diego is not one policy. It'll be a number of policies that we will support. Things like the 5 big moves that SANDAG is proposing. Some of you may have caught that presentation on Friday. and things like youth opportunity passes for to have free transportation, public transportation for people under 25, things like that. If you could go on to the next slide. I'll go through these really quickly. Basically, I'll let you can read these for yourself, just in the interest of time. But we need legally binding local and state climate laws to make this happen and to implement the path to zero carbon now. Next slide. Of course, the presentation from SDG&E that you just heard in terms of transportation, that is, really the largest, portion of what San Diego can affect. And so public transportation, more people walking, more people biking, more people driving electric cars if they need to have a car, all those things are going to be a critical component of what we push forward. Next slide. We also want to, really focus on more of a regenerative process instead of extractive. What can we do in terms of sustainably living in our community instead of taking things out and just continue to consume and to burn? We need to find ways to live much more in harmony with our environment. And so we want to recognize the practices of indigenous communities in the past and their regenerative practices that we should be following. Next slide. And people want this, this is a thing. Poll after poll after poll really doesn't break down whatever political side of the column you are on. This is just one poll, Climate Power 2020 poll, but you can find lots and lots of polls out there that show that this is what people want. 71% of voters nationwide support bold action to combat climate change. 69% of battleground voters support bold climate action. 77% of youth and Latinx voters support action to defeat the climate crisis. Next slide. Of course, we need from the top. It would be great if we had an administration that was sympathetic to this. But again, we need to have it come from the bottom up too. We need to go way beyond market-based instruments. We're going to need some policies and the public structure, system to come up and come up with regulations and laws and regulations on this if we're going to do this in time. Next slide. And just a few examples of what other cities and areas are doing. The state of New York, Climate and Community Protection Act of 2019. The goal is to be carbon neutral by 2050. They have very ambitious targets for the electric sector. They've come up with climate councils and a climate justice working group. Nothing's perfect. They lack a jobs component, which is very important to us. Next slide. Los Angeles, they have their LA Green New Deal in 2019, being carbon neutral by 2050. They came up with a jobs cabinet, 400,000 jobs in the sectors in the clean energy sector by 2050. They have very ambitious goals for zero waste and wastewater and tree canopy. Next slide. Most recently, Seattle, very, very recently, in fact, just last month, they passed a Jumpstart Seattle tax. This is a progressive tax on businesses that have over 7 million in payroll. It's going to raise $214 million a year. 22 million a year for will go specifically to the Green New Deal. A lot of that money is going to go towards affordable housing in in areas where there's already mass transit and and job centers. So it much of that money is still going to Green New Deal in terms of affecting positive effect on climate change by having people work near where they live. Next slide. So lots of policy opportunities that we're going to be looking at. Like I said, Sandag's five big moves is going to be really important to us. We hope that goes through. you haven't learned about that, you should. It's a very ambitious plan. So we're going to need a lot of regional collaboration. So the San Diego Green New Deal is the entire San Diego County region, and we'll probably also be reaching out to the Tijuana and Northern Baja California area as well. But we're going to need lots of community-driven solutions, and hopefully stimulus dollars for COVID can help us build back better. Next slide. So just to kind of conclude here, again, what will we be asking for any organization to join, if that was the city of Chula Vista, would to commit to our vision, that one-page vision that you all have, and commit to our guidelines, and to having a representative that would represent the city on the advisory board, again, that meets monthly. Occasionally, we will put out press releases, we'll put out endorsement letters for a certain policy or budget item that will ask all of the partners to sign on to. Not all may not agree with everything that we do, and so they may not sign on to things, but we'll be asking everybody to do that. So far, everyone we've had has been it's been unanimous in the types of things we've supported. And there's no financial commitment to being a participant, a member of the Alliance. Again, it's just a commitment to the vision and to work with us to make sure that we get to a cleaner climate by 2035. Any questions, anyone?
Okay, I'll now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before we deliberate it. As a reminder, please refresh your view on your screen to ensure new comments as they appear. The public comment time is now closed. I don't see any new items that were submitted since we started the timeout. So any comments or questions from the commission? Ms. Ostrowski, yes.
I believe this, can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I really believe that this, being a part of the Alliance gives us a seat at the table. We're doing a lot of these things already. Fits really well with our climate action plan. And I think what we have to do here is we can't count on the federal government, as you can see, the Paris Agreement. Yet our mayor was proactive and still being active in that agreement and attending that with the other mayors. And so I think this gives us an opportunity to work within the region to really promote climate action, environmental justice, and green jobs. So this is nothing that's going to be very costly to the city. It's just a matter of having either a council person or whoever they assign sit on those monthly meetings. And it's just a recommendation at this point to the city.
Any other comments or questions at this point? The agenda items says that we're being asked to consider a referral to the council to send a letter of support to San Diego Green Deal. I don't think it's involves a commitment of the city to assign staff or other things that were described in the presentation. It's just a letter of referral, a letter of support. At least that's what's on the agenda. Do I understand it correct?
Yeah,
I would move.
You have a motion, go ahead, please.
Okay, this is Commissioner Baugh. I would move to support a letter of support. I would move that we write a letter of support for the Green New Deal. Encouraging, I'm sorry, are we writing a letter to the city council for them to support it, or just a letter of support to the Green New Deal?
I believe the item is consideration of a referral to council to send a letter of support for the San Diego Green New Deal.
Okay. So I am moving that we.
Sure.
This is David. Is it okay if I comment?
Yes, go ahead and clarify, yes.
Yeah, to clarify, yeah, I had asked a question about this because writing a letter of support to us would not, mean anything. So really what the action item should be, if you choose to do this, would be to send a letter or to refer this to the Chula Vista City Council to see if they would want to consider the city of Chula Vista becoming a member of the alliance. So really that would be the action, would be, does the city of Chula Vista want to be a member of the alliance? And in that case, they would apply to us, and then we would review, and the alliance would vote on their admission or not, if they chose to do this.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't change the action item because this is a public meeting. So if that's the action, if you're requesting, we'd have to defer that to the next meeting.
Yeah, I sent a message. I can't remember who I sent it to, but I sent a message about that action item not being the correct wording, but I guess it didn't get fixed.
Yeah, I regret that. I think we all support this, but if we can't take an action that you want, then there's no use taking action at all. If you're suggesting a letter of support isn't going to be any good.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate everyone's support, and you could do a letter, but I don't think, we're not soliciting letters. That's not going to do anything on our end.
So can we get this on our agenda for next meeting?
Yes, if you guys vote to do that, I think that's what we can do. Yep.
We have to vote for it to be on the agenda for next meeting.
I think just to cross all the T's and dot all the I's, since this is on the agenda this way, if you want to have your motion be to have this revisit on the next agenda to then refer to council to become a member, we can do that.
So this is Monica. So the vice chair could actually just make the recommendation to move it to the next meeting, to next month's meeting, and that's fine.
I guess as chair, then I'll simply move this to the next meeting. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Okay, then this is moved to the next meeting, and I guess we need to redraft the recommendation to be consistent with what the Green New Deal is asking for. Okay?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Right. Moving on to the final item, except for the information items, consideration or referral to the council to send a letter of support for AB 345, environmental justice bill regarding oil and gas. Is there a staff presentation on this item?
There is no presentation.
Okay, so I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any comments on the item before we deliberate. As a reminder, please refresh your view of the screen to ensure you see the comments as they appear. The comment period is now closed. I don't see any new comments having come in during the pause. So commissioners, any questions or any comments that you have?
Well, I brought this agenda item to the table here, and it has a lot to do with the local 350 group, similar to the Green New Alliance as well. And what it is, it's AB 345 is an environmental justice issue. It has a lot to do with setting up a buffer zone of 2,500 feet or setback for schools and playgrounds in areas of oil and gas drilling and production. This bill has been going through a lot of changes, and there's been some pushback from our local senators here within the region. Well, one of the senators, state senators within the region. And so I just thought we would, from my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I was told by one of the members of the 350 group that our mayor and mayor of Imperial Beach did write a letter on behalf of this issue. It's something that's important. And what's happening here too is it kind of coincides with another thing that's happening within our state. I don't know if people are very well aware, but fracking is starting again here in California. There was a moratorium on that, and as of April, they've opened it up and permits have been issued. So my feeling is that you're going to see more drilling. It doesn't really impact us here within this region, even though there are wells and requests for permits within San Diego, but it doesn't really impact us here in a sense within the county. But it does impact Northern California, and it kind of fits in with the whole carbon footprint and fossil fuel initiatives that our city and the Alliance are really looking at. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm not sure if there's been any other developments here. There was some changes last week, and it was supposed to be voted on this week and it got tabled. And my thing is that I would say is that support the key issues or element of disputed environmental justice, and that the oil, gas, and drilling production should require that 2,500 feet setback. That's been a setback that's been reviewed by many scientists. And you have a lot of drilling that's occurring within that setback within the state of California, within the city of Los Angeles area. And most of these areas that are being impacted are non-white and Hispanic communities. And this was created, this assembly bill, in essence, by an area in Arvin, California, where they had a gas leak. And they tried to work within the county. They kind of tried all the different avenues to address the issue. And it ended up, those lawsuits that took place. But long story short, it led to this assembly bill. And this is what we're doing, is really basically supporting some of these underprivileged communities by supporting AB 345, whether it's dead or alive, and it being an environmental justice issue. I don't know if you have any updates, Manuel, by any, I don't know if you, I know we talked a little bit about this earlier today, as far as where it's going.
Yeah, it's going to be heard at the Senate's Natural Resources Committee on August 12th. And it has, like you said, it has been amended quite a bit. I don't have the comparison documents, but it's still alive as we speak. So once it goes through that committee, we'll find out what happens. Another question, one question I have for the commission is, if we confirm that the mayor sent a letter in support of this legislation, would you still want to send a letter yourself, or recommend that council send a letter?
Well, that's an interesting point, because I'm just curious. She could speak on behalf of the council or as a mayor, because I'd like to have the, the idea was to have the council individually have a voice on this.
Okay, we could confirm that letter, or at least give the letter to the commission to go over, if you like.
So the item before us is to send a letter of support, at least refer to the city council to send a letter of support to the bill. So that's the action that you're requesting us to take.
Yeah, that's originally what it was. And like I said, it's been changing. I mean, throughout the day, throughout the week. So that's what we can, I guess, based on when this was issued, this agenda, I guess we could say that's what it is right now.
So is there a reason to proceed ahead and at least let the city council know that the commission has a position on this, or are you suggesting that maybe no action on that on this item? I'm not sure where you're going with it.
Well, the action was to support this bill, and like I said, it's been going through changes. So I just, whether it's dead or alive or whatever happens to it, I would say my proposal is to support the bill in a sense to the city council.
Is there a motion to that effect?
There's a question.
Yeah, I was asking if there was a motion to recommend the city council that they send a letter of support as is identified on the agenda. There's a motion to do that.
I have a question on a motion.
Go ahead.
I'm reading the comment that was submitted by Rita Clement, and I'm confused because she says that Ben Hueso asked that they remove the 2,500 foot setback, and they did that. He still voted against it, but if they remove the setback, what does this bill do? Is there no setback, or is there something more to it than a setback? I don't understand what the bill is now.
That was the primary concern, was the setback, and that's what it kind of was all about. So, like I said, it may be dead now. It may not be a real issue in a sense, because that's what everybody was striving for. You do have, you know, the oil and petroleum industry pushing really hard on this. They're against it, of course, and they are major campaign contributors to many of the people that probably are voting on this in our state senate and assembly. And so I would say it's a tough one, but that's really what it was. That's what originally was meant for, and so who knows where it's going right now through because of all the changes.
Yeah, I don't feel informed about it.
Yeah. But I mean, my thought was at least maybe supporting it in a sense on what I stated, and that it's we support the 2,500 setback. It doesn't probably mean a whole lot. I mean, because this whole thing could be dead, but it's just that. But that's just something I wanted to bring to the table.
So was there a motion, Commissioner Bao, that you wanted to put on the table?
No, because I'm too confused.
Okay.
Sorry, I would abstain from something.
Okay. Well, based on the discussion, I'm going to use executive action and defer this to the next meeting. Is that what we want to do to get some clarity?
Maybe Ed could give us an update. But...
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. I mean, with everything going on with this, like I said, from what it was last week to what it is today, it has changed.
Okay.
Although August 12th is going to be too late.
Yeah.
Discuss it a month from now.
August 12th is 2 days from now.
Yeah.
Yeah. We wouldn't even look at this. Wouldn't even get before the city council before then.
Yep, and I mean, it is challenging in a sense. It was just a kind of, yeah, it's just too many changes going on with this. So I mean, I understand where everyone's going on this. And like I said originally, when we start thinking about it, but today we wrote some calls about it, and it may be a dead issue. So, but I'm bringing it just there, just at least at this point, have some attention to this, and we can always see where it goes. It's probably not going to completely die. I mean, there's doctors from Kaiser, from Permanente, that are really pushing to bring this back. So we'll probably see this in the future somewhere at some time.
Well, let's defer it to the next meeting and bring it back for further discussion at that point. Okay. Finished with that particular item. I guess we're down to the. Let's see where we are here. I think we're near the end of the agenda, if I'm looking at it right.
Correct.
So I guess it's down to staff comments. Any comments the staff wants to bring to the table quick one?
Hi there, this is Colleen. I just had two quick staff comments I wanted to mention. One is that Office of Sustainability staff are presenting a summer sustainability series of online free webinars for whoever, community members or people from wherever. We're a few webinars in. So far, we've had presentations on biking in Chula Vista, San Diego community power, and recycling. And then this week, we have one on naturescape, and then some other, and that deals with yards and also using natural lawn care and irrigation techniques. And then coming up in the next few weeks, there'll be one about clean energy at home, composting 101, going electric in Chula Vista, which is regarding electric vehicles, food waste, and sustainability at the library. So if you'd like to join these, I think there might be a few folks, attendees on the line that have joined a couple of these so far. If you go to our usual website, which is the usual chulavistaca.gov website, and then you do /clean, you'll find the link to the webinars there. So there will be 9 in total, and they are each standalone. They go from basically July through September. So we're really excited about that, especially given the fact that we can't do a lot of in-person outreach these days. And the other great thing about it is that they'll also as we go through them, we're recording them and then posting the videos and the presentations online as well. So if you've missed them, you can go back and watch them. And then the second one was that we're having our next climate change working group meeting on August 19th from 3 to 5 p.m. And that will be online as well. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Just briefly, we have just a quick update on the Monumentals Senate Bill 1383, which is the Organics and Food Waste Prevention Program for all cities and counties in California. Just a quick update on that is that the state agency, which is Cal Recycle, has not finished the rulemaking process. They're planning to finalize by November at the latest. Once we hear the final rules have been approved, then we'll have a presentation for the commission and to understand all the different requirements that will be set for Chula Vista. And second, just an announcement, I was selected to be on a statewide commission for recycling markets. I joined a group of 18 other folks from different places of the state, and we're tasked to give a recommendation to the legislature on best ways to manage recycling, best ways to create markets, and what is next for processing as well. So really proud of that. And it was also brought on, this commission was created by also a piece of legislation that was to enhance markets, recycling markets in the state. And that's all I have.
Any other staff comments from anyone?
Yes, good evening, Chair, Vice Chair. For the record, this is Dennis Kakunga, Chief Sustainability Officer. I just wanted to start off by welcoming and thanking our newest commissioner, Dr. Rodriguez. We're really excited to have you join the commission. And I also wanted to thank and welcome our new chair and congratulate our new chair and vice chair. We're really looking forward to working with you all going forward. And as part of that, we also will have our new city manager, Maria Cachadorian, attend our next commission meeting to meet the team and also talk about city priorities. So I just wanted to share that with the commission.
Very good. Any other staff? I'm going to skip over the chair's comments. Commissioners, any comments you want to put in? Information you want to provide?
Yes, this is okay. So this is Tina Mathias. I attended this BCDC committee, which is the Bayfront Cultural Design and Committee, and they had a call for artists for the Harbor Park and the Sweetwater Parks. And it's a local, for the Harbor Park, it was a nationwide call, and they had over 200 plus qualified artists. And for Sweetwater, it's a local Southern California artist, and therefore they are, let's see, the local artists are just from Southern California. So there's 2 committee members on the section on the panel, and for the CB or BCDC, and they will only keep they will always keep in at the heritage of the area, but they will also look for the sustainability elements within the project. So I made sure that that was part of the criteria.
Okay, and any other commissioners with comments? Just moving on to the chair's comments, just one update on the Wildlife Advisory Group. We did have a meeting, which basically we had a drone flyover of the bicycle trail that's now complete. It goes from the new RV center down to where the Harbor Park will begin. It's not open yet, but it's there and it's installed. So that was good news. Plus, apparently there's going to be a reapplication for funding to accelerate Sweetwater Park. It was turned down on the first round, but because money was left over and uncommitted, the court's applying again. So there's a possibility that the Sweetwater Park might actually get accelerated before the convention center is built and the rest of it. So that was an update on that particular item. Otherwise, my congratulations to the new chair and vice chair. And I look forward to you taking over and giving us great leadership as we go forward starting next month. And with that, I will declare the meeting to be adjourned. It's 7:29 p.m.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, if I was wrong.